We have all heard of the myths and the legends of our history. But is there another story? In the Bible, we had Ezekiel who was brought up into the space. In the Apocryph text, we have Abraham who was up there. In the book of Enoch, we had Enoch who clearly described he was there among the guardians of the sky. Enoch even learns the language of them. So I give just 4 examples. The same situations happen in old India. There was one of the young men, his name was Arjuna. Later he became a king. The extraterrestrials, like Ezekiel, like Enoch, they took Arjuna up to the sky. They bring him up there. Arjuna, like Enoch, learns the language of the extraterrestrials. He describes that he was there for many years. He even realized that the extraterrestrials had a war. They were not of the same opinion. Some of them were fighting against the other because some of them want to help the humans or did not want to help, or want to take out our natural sources like gold, etc. And some of them were against it. So they had a war in space. Arjuna realized that of one of these flying machines, some lightnings are coming out. 2 of the cities out there were completely destroyed and only one survived. Later, Arjuna comes back to Earth. And while he is on Earth, he of course describes to his people what he has seen. And this was written down. You find the writing in the Vedas. You find this passage in the 5th book of the Mahabharata. Mahabharata is composed of many, many books. It's the biggest mythology of the world in India, the Mahabharata. And in the 5th book, you find this description. Arjuna says, he was brought up there. He even gives the name of the pilot. The pilot's name was Matali. And he says, up there, I saw a gigantic city. It was composed of hundreds of bulls. So bulls, one bull in another bull. All this together made a gigantic city. And there were 3 of these cities in orbit of the Earth. And they surrounded the Earth. The same thing which Enoch is telling in another story. Just this time, it's the old Indian stuff. Enoch is telling about the mutiny. He's telling about destruction. Arjuna, this time in India, is telling about destruction, about the mutiny, that some of these cities in the sky were destroyed, not by humans, by themselves. They had a war. And here we came again to the old situation, a war in heaven. If heaven would be this place of happiness, because you are united with God, then there is no war. The word heaven is wrongly translated. We must change the word heaven into space, because there were wars in heaven. There were different humans who were up there. They were brought back to earth with more knowledge than before. Heaven was space. A war in space is possible. That happened in many old cultures. We have figures like angels. An angel, in our normal knowledge, is a being, a messenger coming from God, down from the sky. We represent angels with wings, with halos around their head. But these angels were not fine guys. These angels had sex with some humans. These angels were no spirits. These angels had war among each other, described in other texts. So we must change the word angel into the word extraterrestrial. And an archangel is one of the leaders of one of the group of the extraterrestrials. We must change only about 10 words in the old so-called holy writings, and we change the complete meaning. And exactly this takes now place in our time. We have translations from the Vedas in ancient India, made with our modern knowledge, made by Professor Dr. Dinlep Kanjilal. Flying machines in ancient India. This is a scientific work. It's not just stupid fantasy. Every phrase is proven with every figure, like in the Bible. We have the description. Then we have a doctor in Sumerology. His name is Dr. Hermann Burgard. Burgard finally started to translate an old text. The text is called the Temple Wall of Encheduanna. Encheduanna was the high priest. She was the daughter of Sargon I, Sargon, Sumerian king. So about 2300 BC. Dr. Burgard translated the writings of Encheduanna, of the high priest, and he clearly, absolutely, in his 2 books, which are on the market now, says, this is extraterrestrial being. This has nothing to do with God, nothing to do with natural catastrophes like storms or earthquakes. This is not science fiction. We can prove it in the meantime absolutely clear. Encheduanna described it. So it's time. Our time is ripe. We have new translations of the old texts. We should continue. In the past, we translated all this wrong, not because we were bad guys, not because we are stupid, or not because of a conspiracy. Our fathers, our professors in the past, two generations ago, they were brilliant persons, but they had not our knowledge. 150 years ago, there was nothing like flying. There was nothing like space travel. In the meantime, we have this object. In the meantime, we know it is possible to travel from star to star. In the meantime, we have the knowledge about genetics, that it is possible to create a human race out of the tree of the family. So we know the situation has changed. The spirit of time has changed. And we are the one generation with our scientific knowledge, we could go on and it would be easily to find the compulsive and the final proof for extraterrestrials. We could do it today. We could go in orbit with the space shuttle, and we could look for an extraterrestrial object, the time capsule up there. We will find it. We just have to do it. That's why we have to change the spirit of time. We must look at all these things with our modern knowledge, and then we come to another answer. And the answer is beautiful. Concerning our past, we know where we came from, and concerning our future, we know we are part of a family of extraterrestrials, and we don't have to be afraid of them. You see, these virgin birds, they are part of antiquity. These virgin birds, they existed long before Christianity. Many of the old figures had virgin bird. The best example in this connection is Noah. Some 50 years ago, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls was found, and one of the scrolls had the name the Lamech scroll. You have to understand what this is. Lamech was a shepherd, and obviously a rich shepherd. He had many hundreds or thousands of sheep and so on. He was away from his home tents sometimes for months. One day he came back to his home tents, and his wife, her name was Batenosh, had just given birth to a boy. Lamech looks at his boy and says, "This is not my boy. It is absolutely impossible because of the months I was away. I cannot have done this." And the boy looks completely different to the other children I have already. Not the same skin, the same eyes. But his wife, with the name of Batenosh, swears and says, "Dear Father Lamech, I really promise you no one has touched me sexually." She even says, "No of the other shepherd has touched me. None of the soldiers, no one has touched me." So, and Lamech cannot understand this. The boy is finally here. But on the other hand, he loves his wife, Batenosh. So Lamech goes to his father, which is the biblical Methuselah, and tells him the story about the son, the new boy in the family. And says, "I had no sex with him." And my wife said, "She had no sex with no one." So Methuselah, again, does not know a final answer and goes to his father, which is no one else than the biblical Enoch. The same Enoch who was in sky up there and was who learned the language of the extraterrestrials. Enoch says to his son Methuselah, "Go to your son Lamech. Tell him Lamech should accept this boy as his own. Learn him the language, give him the best education, because the guardians of the sky have decided to destroy all flesh on earth by a gigantic flood. But this boy, the son here, should be the father of the future generation. Give him the name of Noah. So we learn from this that Noah was artificially inseminated. Noah's mother Badenosh was artificially inseminated. Now we are all the offsprings of Noah. So in reality, we all have extraterrestrial genes in us. And because the time is right, our brain learns slowly that this makes sense. 100 years ago, we could have not discussed such a hypothesis. It's all garbage 100 years ago. In the meantime, our brain is ready. Now we can say, come on, we can prove that Badenosh has given birth to a boy, but this was an artificial insemination. It was not made by a sexual act. And we are the offsprings of Noah. So we are all part of it. The flood was created on purpose by extraterrestrials. Noah's Ark was a sort of container, and the container survived the flood. And in this container, we had probably the seeds of all kinds of plants and also of all kinds of animals, including us, the humans. We are the offsprings of Noah, and Noah was the product of an artificial insemination. In Norway, all the seeds of every tree, of every plant, of every animal, is all there stored in ice today. You see the story of Noah, you find the same story again in the Epic of Gilgamesh epoch, the Sumerians, and there it is the Sumerian version is older than the biblical version. And the funny thing is, in the Sumerian version, of course, the survivor is not called Noah, is called Utnapishtim. And Utnapishtim does not take animals of every sort into his ship, but artisans and workers of every kind. Because mankind has survived, and the knowledge of our forefather had to survive too. In the Bible, you only find two phrases about of Enoch. It says that Enoch was the seventh patriarch before the great flood, and that Enoch was the first human who left our planet in a fiery chariot. That's in the Bible. Enoch was the first man. Later comes Elijah, but long before Enoch. And Enoch was the seventh patriarch, which is true because we have other translations, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, Lamech, where we know that Enoch was the seventh patriarch. So how do we know about Enoch and about the book of Enoch? About 170 years ago, in the meantime, a British man was in Abyssinia. And there he went to a convent, and he was there for 30 years in a convent. He learned the language of the locals. And in the old library, he found the book of Enoch. He knew the name of Enoch from the Bible. He knew that Enoch was the first man who left the planet in a fiery chariot, but he didn't know a book of Enoch. The book of Enoch, again, is written in the first person, eyewitness, which is very important, not just told in the third person. And Enoch says in his book, it was evening. The society of his village, they all wanted to sleep. Then they hear the noise in the sky. Everybody ran out and looked to the sky, and they saw an object coming down. They were afraid, the society, the people of the village. Then they saw two beings in glittering clothes coming close to the group of locals. They all cried and ran away, except Enoch stood there. He says, I was 12 years old at that time. When the two beings are approximately 2 or 3 meters away from him, he also became afraid and he fell on the ground. He clearly said, I was lying on the ground with my nose, I was respiring the dust of the earth. Of a sudden, some of the strangers took the boy, put him on his feet. And Enoch says, there were two beings which I never saw on earth. Again, the two extraterrestrials speak the language of Enoch. And one of them says, don't be afraid, human. Don't be afraid. Which is important. They say, don't be afraid, human. They do not say, don't be afraid, Enoch. If it would have been God, God knows everything. God would have known the name of the boy. They don't know. Human, don't be afraid. We won't harm you, they say. They finally say, if you wish, boy, 12-year-old, you can come with us and we will teach you a lot of things which are important for your society. Enoch has courage. He says yes. He goes up there. He goes with these two strangers in glittering robes. And only after a few steps, one of the strangers says to Enoch, human, you smell terribly. You stink. And then they order him that he put all his clothes up. Completely naked. He has to jump into a river, which is obviously just there. Then he comes up out of the river. When he's dry, one of the strangers gives him a cream, a sort of cream. Enoch writes all this. He gave me a cream, and he ordered me to put this cream all over my body, including my hair, my face, all over. Enoch even smells on his skin and says, I smelled like ambrosia, honey, and whatever. Then one of the strangers gave him clothes, some sort of clothes, the same clothes which they have on, glittering. Enoch, the young boy, does not know what to do with it. One of the strangers explains to him how he had to put his trousers on. He looks down at him and he says, and look, I looked like one of them. Of course, he's in the same clothes now. Then he goes up. Similar to Abraham, he's thrown over the earth. Up there, he saws gigantic crystals. He says crystals glittering and so. Doors opened automatically, other doors closed again. First they come into a garden where Enoch says there were strange flowers, strange vegetables which I never saw on earth. Then they come in a big round room. In the center of the room is a throne, and on the throne the highest is sitting. Now when these three come inside, two of his own men and Enoch, altogether three, come in the room, the highest stands up from his throne, goes a few steps to Enoch, shakes his hand and tell him, welcome. Whatever I explained now here is truly part of the book of Enoch, but not the way I told it here. Why not? Our professors 150 years ago, 160 years ago, had no idea of flying, etc. They had to use the word of their time. They read the text and they believed some angels have come down. They took a human into the heaven. So I said two extraterrestrials came. In the original Enoch, you read two angels have come down. Now I said, they said, human, you are stinking. That's written in the book of Enoch. Now and they put him into the water. In the original Enoch, they said now he was put into the water to baptize him. Ridiculous before the great flood. There was no baptism, etc. Then he receives a cream. In my eyes, he was simply disinfected. In the religious version, he says, now he receives the cream of a high priest. And then they give him this clothes, glittering clothes. In my eyes, he receives the same overall which they have before they go up to space. In the religion translation, they said, now he's dressed as a high priest. So we made the translation completely wrong. Enoch finally is up there, and he comes to this garden with different plants and smells and colors. In religious version, they say Enoch now is working to the paradise or to the heavenly garden of the heaven. In my eyes, it was simply a plantation, because in an extraterrestrial spaceship, you have to grow up your own vegetable. Enoch doesn't know that. Finally, he comes in the big room with the throne in the center. In the religious version, they say, no, Enoch is standing in the highest heaven, standing before the throne of the Almighty God. which is absolutely nonsense, because the real Almighty God, even if he would have a throne, and Caesar would never stand up, shake hand with human and welcome him in heaven. We made all these translations wrong, not because he was stupid, simply because it was the time which was different. About 1,800 years ago, there were thousands and thousands of sheets of pergaments writing of all time. And then the so-called fathers of the church came together, and they simply could not understand what these writing was. So some of the writing they put on one part, and other writings which they could not understand, they put on the other part. And often some of these writings of the other part are not complete. For example, in the book of Enoch, we have stories which definitely are missing. So from one part, they made out a book which later is called the Holy Bible. And from the other part, it was separated because it was not complete and because they couldn't understand it. And today they are called apocryphic texts. So the book of Enoch is part of the apocryphic texts. The Vatican is definitely hiding knowledge about the ETs. In my eyes, they must know about the extraterrestrials. They have the writings in the Vaticanic library, and they are very clever. You see, the Jesuits among them. I was educated for 6 years in the Catholic high school led by the Jesuits. They are brilliant people. They are not stupid. Most of them have at least one doctor degree, some of them 2 or 3. Brilliant people. They know exactly what was going on. But again, the time is not ripe. They cannot come out to the public and say the angels were in reality extraterrestrials. Enoch was not in heaven. Enoch was in a spaceship. The time is not ripe for this. That's why we have to change the spirit of time. The spirit of time is the knowledge of a certain time. We know today of aircraft. We know today that genetical changes are possible. We know today that space traveling would be possible. We know today that there are different dimensions out there. Our forefathers did not know of this. Their spirit of time was different than our spirit of time. Because of our knowledge, the spirit of time has changed. And we live in a fascinating time. Just for me, it all goes much too slow, because some societies, like the churches and other societies, they still try to push back the spirit of time. They do not want that the human race knows too much about the past, because they would lose their power. Well, in the meantime, I'm 82 years old, and I'm afraid that in my lifetime this will not happen. I would be very happy if it would happen. But in the lifetime of the young generations, of our boys and girls of today, it will definitely happen. In the lifetime of our boys and girls, and I suggest within the next 10 years, and that's a long episode, we will have official contact with extraterrestrials. And then our knowledge of the past, our belief of the past, our religion simply crashes. I'm Erich von Daniken. Join me next time on Beyond the Legends.